All right. Welcome to another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time we'll be covering chapter 20.3. And just the one. We'll cover 20.4 and 20.5 on the next episode. Let me get the stream link out there. So as we've seen a few times, or just the one time before, we've sort of moved into a time period when the pictures are going to be from outside of Taylor's eye view. Since she spent that time blind, that was, we felt like, a good point to move out of her personal eyeline perspective and into her more disassociated perspective. Dissociated? But the perspective that she has for when she's seeing through her bugs, Vale says, "Hi all. It's funny, my phone beeps and it's around 3 p.m. on Saturday, and I just go to YouTube and search your channel." Oh, that's good. That's good. And since you're here, Vale, I know you've already answered it, but as a reminder, the audience participation question was 20.3. Were you surprised by the events in the principal's office? And so we'll check out them answers later. But, we've got the themes. The themes are, I think, I put down bullying and reversal of fortune. Which I thought were both quite strong. And I do think the bullying and reversal of fortune will still be the themes for next week's 2 chapters also. So, there's that. Let's see here. Nobody else has sidled in, but I think I'm gonna jump in on my chapter summary already, even though the art's still going. So no beats are missed between chapters. This chapter opens with Taylor answering Emma's question that she is in fact trying to avoid her. Emma's feigning a feeling of rejection and brings up that they used to be friends. Come on, Taylor. But Taylor keeps actively thinking that she doesn't want to waste time or get caught up or whatever. But all of her actions are to stay engaged in the situation and keep dealing with Emma. So, a classic worm disconnect where a character says one thing and does another thing. And even convinces themselves they believe something. Vale says, these are really relaxing chapters. Taylor has a nice visit to school and talked to all her old friends. Accurate description of the chapter. They've already generated a crowd of onlookers, the various students who had still been waiting outside in the courtyard instead of going into class. They're watching from a middle distance to see how this plays out, and Emma's side has appeared, a bunch of girls who seemingly have left the city and come back like Emma did. Even though Taylor can tell Emma's going to start trouble and thinks everyone watching can tell, the guards aren't intervening, and Taylor sees this as them backing Emma, since she can't use direct violence while they're still watching the scene play out. Which is kind of funny. I totally get her perspective, but it does hinge on the idea that it's I was just gonna beat up Emma, but these stupid guys were there. is a little funny. We love Taylor on this stream. Emma drops a line that we're likely to remember Taylor saying to her after getting back from summer camp. It's a slight variation, but changed your look? I have to say, you managed to make any style look great. And it's obviously echoing what Taylor had complimented, or when Taylor had complimented Emma's new hairstyle. Taylor can tell that there's something she's supposed to pick up on, but she doesn't remember what Emma was referencing from the past. And like, if you think about Taylor's perspective, there's no reason she would have latched onto like that moment of the interaction they had. Like, for her, there were so many worse points, and like maybe she would have thought back over the idea of like, what did I say leading up to that? But it's very easy to think that maybe she had been more focused on the later bits of the conversation where Emma was just being like absolutely horrible to her, you know? And of course the line stuck with Emma because to her the whole hair thing was part of the big trauma. So Taylor counters with a flat, "You're not impressing anyone." Because, I mean, you don't need to catch the reference to say that. And Emma pretends that this is some unwarranted hostility from Taylor. And when Taylor thinks about it, she's incensed by Emma's audacity, the way she's blatantly turning things around and accusing Taylor of doing the exact same things that she had done at the start of high school. And then Taylor thinks about how she's like 2 seconds from swarming Emma with a zillion bugs. They don't say it that often, but they do keep flicking back to, yeah, it's crazy how riled up my bugs were, seeing as how like flat my emotions were. It's, you know, I have no idea why. Yeah, she's thinking about how catching Emma off guard and watching her realize just how bad of a situation she entered would be so satisfying. But no, Taylor's not actually going to put bugs in Emma's mouth. She's above that. She's only going to soothe herself with a nice visualization exercise. "I can imagine the bugs crawling into the mouth," she says. Anyway. The daydream goes on long enough that real time passes instead of just Taylor Hebert brain time, and Emma makes fun of her for taking too long to respond. Taylor lists off some stuff that she dealt with since the Leviathan attack and staying in Brockton Bay, and Emma loses points with the crowd when she tries to brush this off, that this stuff wasn't a big deal. Some obvious disdain for Emma at this point, I think. This line of conversation seems to be working for Taylor, so she keeps it going. She's telling a story, she's painting a picture, I would say, even, for Emma, that resonates with the crowd, about how she respects even the most depraved of the people who stayed in the town more than she does Emma. We get some predictable response from Emma getting angry and trying to clap back, and then Taylor keeps a nice calm flow, talking about how, talking about Emma's narrow worldview and her small potatoes concerns. Emma's like, "Oh yeah? Well, my worldview might be narrow, but you're unpopular, so I beat you." And Taylor's kind of like, "Everything you're doing right now is embarrassing yourself." And then, grasping for straws, Emma flat out tells her that she's a dropout and a failure. So Taylor gets off some nice quips. "You're getting more desperate and less effective." Even though Taylor's winning the conversation fight at this point, she's still there questioning herself if she should have let Emma like spin out longer before pointing out how she was just sort of wildly lashing out and not getting anything done. But, you know, ever a self-critic, that Taylor. One of Emma's new cronies hits us with the, "Who do you think you are, talking to her like that?" And oh no, now there's more of them. Another lackey steps up and, "You think you sound so smart, telling her what she's..." But they don't have to cover her for long. Emma cuts off this second person with a raised hand, and Mean Emma's back, and she's mad. Taylor goes through, you know, some more internal turmoil, masked as disinterest. She sees Emma being angry and feels hollow about how she should feel better about this than she does. Emma's spitting out insults that we know are basically projection of her own insecurities. "You're a wimp, Hebert, a coward. You just want to look strong, pretend you're something other than what you are." And Taylor just keeps playing it cool, saying she wants to eat lunch with Danny. And despite all her talk about how none of this matters, when she examines how agitated she's becoming, she feels more disconnected and out of proportion with reality. She just, like, is off kilter this whole time and never re-enters the kilter. Boop, 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 boop. Emma calls her a coward again and says that Taylor should thank her. That if she had grown a spine earlier, things would have been fine. Which, as discussed in Emma's interlude, she clearly stood up for herself from the start, and this is just post hoc cope from Emma to justify what she's done so far. Emma goes on to tell Taylor that if she stood up to them and laughed off the pranks, she could have been friends with them. Which, I mean, I think we can all agree is just historical revisionism. And it's just not how things played out. So, Taylor connects the dots that Emma is referring to Sophia letting Taylor be friends with them. And she can't reveal the fact that she knows about the Sophia Shadowstalker connection, but she's able to use it to guide herself through the conversation. And at certain points I do just pull out some big quote portions, especially later on in the chapter. But how determined are you that you think I'd fucking want to be your friend after all the shit you pulled? Are you really better off where you are? Now? Yes. Then? Fuck, even then, yes. I called you pathetic a minute ago, but Sophia's worse than you. And so I sort of cut the quote there, and Taylor, you know, tears into Sophia and belittles Emma at the same time. She's got some mad shit talk going. She's, like I said before, I know that conversations are not always fights, but this conversation is a fight, and Taylor's winning. When Taylor doesn't stop, even after Emma says, "Watch it," one of her lackeys tries to step up, and Emma shoves her back, which causes the guard to give her a warning. And Emma gives a half-hearted "sorry" to the friend, then tries to go in at Taylor again. And yet again, she wants to eat lunch with her dad, or she says she wants to eat lunch with her dad, and kind of tries to say Emma has no more cards to play. She even says, like, "Oh, you've used my dead mom in the past, so unless you're going to pull a weapon, I don't know what you're going to do." And then Emma's like, "Not only do I have cards left to play, but I've been saving this one special." And she makes the claim that not only is it her fault that her mom died, but that Danny also blamed and blames her for this and doesn't love her. So, I mean, harsh critique, some would say. But you know, Emma resorts to these sorts of things. Let's see here. It's gonna take a moment. Take a drink. Hopefully I'm not ASMRing too hard on that water drink, but who knows. Emma says that her dad, Alan, had to talk to Danny to get him to take responsibility for taking care of Taylor again after Annette had died, when he couldn't function. And this is sort of lining up with things Taylor remembers, and Emma's hitting home a bit now, but Taylor decides that even if Danny doesn't like her, he does love her. And Taylor's a bit internally discombobulated, I would say, but on the outside, she remains calm and ready. She basically thinks she'll have to think it over later, but for now have to treat it like she's on the wrong side of a tattletale head game. You know, wild assertions with some cold reading, with some what will hurt their feelings the most. Typical tattletale / Emma style gameplay. Yet again, Taylor tries to ask if she can leave now, and Emma tries to counter that since she doesn't care about this accusation, that just means she's a heartless bitch. Taylor starts to casually demean Emma again, and it's going well, but she stops because she gets a call from her dad. They catch up a minute, and she says she's at the school, but she still wants to meet for lunch. While she's discussing meeting him, the scene from the art occurs here, as you can see visually. Emma starts physically attacking Taylor until a guard grabs Emma. Now she's going to the principal's office. The guard says he can't stop arguments because there are too many, so they just step in if there's an actual physical confrontation. Taylor's told that she doesn't have to go to the office, but basically, she wouldn't be there to speak up for herself as a victim and more or less testify, so she'd be losing out on that. Gotta let the dog in. Taylor picks up her phone, which was knocked to the ground when she got shoved over. She explains what's happening and says that she's going to the office. She doesn't need Danny to come to the school, but she does let him know that they can get lunch tomorrow. He agrees to this. Taylor says, "Thanks, love you," to Danny, and gets a "you too" back for a moment. She's distracted by what Emma had said. It sort of rings in her mind. Now the dog's making a racket in the background. She walks in and just sort of stomps the shit out of the blanket for a while, even if it's in the position she was using as a bed the last time she walked in. You know, what are you going to do? So the guard points out 3 students, 2 who lived through the rough days in the city, and 1 of Emma's cronies. One of the students is the girl who had been pointed out in the previous chapter, who had the, cut hair. Pretty sure it's the one second from the right in the image here. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So they all head inside as a group, and Emma keeps trying to pull dumb shit, like trying to walk another direction and escape or something. But all this does is draw in more attention to her as the guard keeps having to, grab her and make her walk the correct direction. So it's some pretty pathetic attempts to escape. Once they reach the office, Principal Howell is on a phone call that she seems relieved to have an excuse to end. They sit down in her office, and Taylor judges the principal both in looks and thinks that she didn't stay in the city. She doesn't keep mentioning the looks, which we kind of know is because when she talks about someone looking bad, it kind of means she doesn't respect them rather than she actually cares about their looks. unless she's saying someone's hot but evil, she's usually saying how she feels about them when she describes how they look. And on the second part, where she thinks that this woman didn't stay in the city, she changes her tune like immediately when seeing the demeanor of the principal actually talking and running this meeting. And so she seems to be surprised and impressed by Howell. The guard gives a short summary. Extended argument was initiated by the blonde one. The one with the glasses tried to back out. Blonde escalated to punching and shoving. I stepped in. Okay, witnesses, any commentary? Keep it short. What he said. The one who started it, I think her name was Emma. Yeah, she's a bitch. It's a classic line, and it's like, after all this time, Emma's finally just getting like an honest assessment from outside of how people see her and feel about her, which is that she sucks, and that being mean to people sucks. So Taylor is reeling here. She thinks for things to be going this way in a school setting, there must be powers involved. She's worried that she's in some sort of warped dimension, or that she's hallucinating again. Emma didn't do anything wrong. There's a history. She was only responding to some stuff that happened before. Howell says that she doesn't care about the past and points out how there's been fighting with weapons in school, like 3 different fights with weapons today. And so they've got bigger fish to fry here than old arguments. She openly tells them that she's giving more leeway to the students who had the harder time of staying in the city. Emma says it's not fair. Then Howell totally roasts her ass, saying how stupid she was to do something like this and how it was dangerous. All of this is still blowing Taylor's mind, by the way. Taylor's mind doesn't stop going like... That's the noise that we hear from Taylor's exploding head. And then what do we got? Howell starts talking to the other kids, proving her point. I didn't pull these quotes, but I think I am gonna just go to it because it's like my explanation doesn't get the cadence right, and the cadence is what feels really just like, I don't know, satisfying, I guess. You there, your name? Terry. Did you bring a weapon to school today? No. Have you been in a fight in the last few weeks? A few. Okay, and you, miss? Sheila. And yeah, brought a weapon. Do you have it on you? She looks shifty, and then she pulls out basically a... oh, yeah, it totally is the girl from the other chapter. It says she's got a piece of metal dangled, or it's a keychain, a piece of metal dangled from it, a bar that could be gripped, and 2 spikes stuck out. Oh, wait, no. Now I'm misreading it. Maybe it's not the same girl. I think the other girl had like a stick weapon with electrical tape for grips. So maybe it's the same girl, but she's just got a second weapon. I don't know. I think I'm just trying to make connections where it isn't connected. And then we get, thank you. If you could hand them to Collins, I'd appreciate it. And then she gives a wary look. Or you could step outside. Yeah, I'll do that. And your name? Taylor Hebert. Were you armed? Yeah. She handed over a basic weapon without a fuss. Cheap knife, basic sheath. And if pushed, if you had it, would you have used it? She hesitates. You won't get in trouble if you say yes. Be honest. I don't know. Define pushed. Never mind. Have you used it? That one? No. But you have used a knife. And then she nods. I really just like how it's just like Taylor's hedging, but it's just like clear that it's like, well, of course I've stabbed somebody with a knife, but it wasn't this knife. You can't prove I did any. And I mean, she's not wrong to be defensive about it, but it is funny. And so anyway, what was I saying? She's proving her point more and more as the conversation goes on, and then yeah, I can just skip my paragraph about it. It's just a summary of what I just read out, and then it's, I hope you're getting my point. You're saying they could have hurt me. Would have in some cases. This isn't the city you're used to, nor the same students. It's fine. And so, running their names through the computer, Howell finds the records about the text messages that Regent had sent from Sophia's personal phone to the schools and the police. This is where I start getting heavy with the actual polls that I did have in my summary. A number of past incidents, and we got the emails from Winslow High School. I did a search for their names, and there's one that postdates the Endbringer attack. It's apparently a series of text messages between an Emma Barnes and Sophia Hess. There's a great deal of discussion of the ongoing bullying campaign against Taylor here. I glanced at Emma. She'd gone pale. So Taylor assumes that this is something Sophia did to Emma. A final fuck you from Sophia, as she says. Still not knowing the full story from Tattletale or Regent. Yeah, she didn't actually follow up with Tattletale later on, like, figuring out what happened. She, conveniently forgot about that. I mean, I know there was a lot going on, but there are multiple times when she was reminded that she was supposed to talk to Tattletale about this. And yet she did not. And then... Yes, further blowing Taylor's mind, Howell asks if she wants to press charges. Emma's fully shocked when Taylor says that she doesn't want to press charges, and she thinks about not being able to have that kind of scrutiny in her life. You know, what with the supervillaining and all. And then what she actually says is, because she's not worth the trouble. The school can take action against her without your consent. Feel free. I want to be done with her, that's all. Very well. Emma, I'll see you again in September. September? The summer classes we're offering are very much a privilege. Now I'm sure you faced your share of stresses and having to relocate twice in a short span of time, but I'm not inclined to extend the same leniency to you that I'm extending to those who have been through so much more. Vale says, Taylor did warn them back in, like, Arc 2 if they stuck their noses in the situation she would leave. Such a risky thing for TT to take this action. Yeah, but I think she was able to justify it to herself decently well because she is doing a blanket thing for this for all the... Not the Undersiders themselves only, because there's only one who goes to this school possibly, which is Taylor, but for all students who are affiliated with the Undersiders. So, you know, I think she's able to like justify it in her own mind that way. And kind of to hope that Taylor never finds out, I guess. So I see where Tattletale is thinking she can get away with it. Anyway. Boop, 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 boop. Okay, so back into the quotes. When you return, we can discuss whether you'll repeat the 10th grade and whether you'll repeat it here. I'll have had time to review the emails and past records. What was I saying? Right. Given the possibility that Taylor might choose to attend in the future, and even just the basics I'm reading here, it may not be conscionable to let you attend as well. This is ridiculous. My dad's a lawyer. There's no way he'll let this happen. Then I expect we'll have a great many discussions in the future. Collins, would you please take her to the front? I'd like a word with Miss Hebert. Vale says, Endbringer, please help. Slaughterhouse 9, please help. PRT, please help. Bullies, don't even think about helping, ever. Got it? I mean, that is more or less it, but pre-knowing Sophia has powers, I think the line is just Is there powers involved? Then you're in. And even when she finds out Sophia does have powers, she intervenes against one of her bullies, at least partially for revenge purposes. And the threshold is crossed because of the powers barrier, like Sophia being on the other side of the powers barrier. Something to think about. That's something I should have brought up in Arc 9/10. But at the time, I hadn't been thinking about it. So just re-listen to those arcs and then make your own supercut where I talk about this from here, and you just cut this little clip and put it there. I'm sure it'll be really worth your time and entertaining. Vale says, I'm being somewhat facetious, by the way. Facetious has every vowel once in alphabetical order, one of two words that does this. Oh, it does. Pretty cool. What's the other word? Anyway, aside from my love of words and putting all of the vowels in order, so the other one is abstemious. Is that about abstaining? I'm not familiar with this word. You'll have to let me in on the definition. It's fun to find words, English words that I don't know, because I know a lot of English words. Yeah, so this is good. And I know I could just look up a list of rare words or something, but it's not the same as encountering it when somebody brings it up. Or reading a book with a new word that you ain't never seen, like palimpsest, which was actually only in the foreword to a book, and it was a judge writing about why he was unbanning said book. Vale says, and you can add an ly to either of them to get the sometimes y vowel at the end alphabetically. That does rule. They're modular to have the and sometimes vowel. Man, words are pretty lit. They're almost as cool as numbers. Where am I? Doot. So, Taylor's mind is still racing. Maybe it's not a hallucination, but a trap. That's gotta be it. Once everyone else is gone, Howl asks Taylor if this was a satisfactory outcome. And she admits, knowing that Taylor has a connection to the Undersiders, and she's looking out for any students who have ties to them as a deal with Tattletale to keep the peace at her school. So, this was at least partially motivated by her friend, who was the previous principal, having recently died after getting into a fight after the city was sort of back up and running. So, student safety is Principal Howell's first concern. Because, I mean, even adults are getting killed around here. Even after hearing the reasoning for what's happening, Taylor still thinks this is a perversion of justice. It just happened to fall in her direction this time. Taylor's about to leave, but Howell says that she needs to fill out some paperwork. She'll have to fill out the visitor form because she's neither a student nor intending to be one. And before Taylor can complain and leave, Howell gets a call and shoos her away to the front area. Now, we know what this call is, because we've all read it before, and we're like, oh man, this isn't just some phone call. But anyway, Emma's waiting in a chair in the front for her dad, with the guards standing over her so she can't accost Taylor or anything, and Taylor goes to the opposite end of the room, feeling like weird, mixed emotions, still keyed up from her argument with Emma, still totally off kilter. There's a few paragraphs about her like being all over the place and having confused emotions and basically not being able to identify what she's feeling, etc. She sits down and tries to center herself by moving into her bugs and being the bug. but she barely has any time to do that, and the secretary calls her over, and she looks at a pre-filled out sheet that she's supposed to check all the details on. But alarm rings out in her mind as she sees what's written for her address. Address, 911 Incoming Street. Alt address, 9191 Escape Avenue. Oh, man, that rules. And then, I looked up in the direction of the principal's office. She was standing at the window, staring at me, a phone pressed to her ear. She mouthed a word at me. Run. Someone knows I'm Skitter. I ran. So yeah, final chapter thoughts. I mean, I don't know that there's gonna be bad ones left in the story, really, but this is another good one. Just really, like, I remember this being like crazy compelling and like, oh my god, like, I don't know. I thought it was going to go bad like all the other things in the past have gone bad for her at school. And then when it's going good, I didn't even make the tattletale connection, because if you just like use reasonable judgment and are not like a dick, then you'd obviously be on Taylor's side. So it just seems like, I don't know, it's like I feel like I was being pulled all over the place too, because it's like, it feels like, of course this is how things should be going, but on the other hand, like, things don't ever go this way for Taylor, so it feels weird. And then it turns out that it was a third thing. Anyway, Vale's yelling exactly. So, I'm assuming to my general points, but maybe to some really specific thing I said. Let's see. Oh, yeah. So, I think the 911 Incoming Street, 9191 Escape Avenue, incredible. It's got the juice. It's both in-universe useful and very funny. Vale says, I think that is my reply to the audience participation, what you just said, but not said as well by me. Oh, give yourself some credit, Vale. We'll read your answer. I'm sure it's fine. I'm impressed with how well Taylor keeps her cool up until the point that Emma hits her, but at the same time I'm like, girl, you should have just physically turned yourself around and walked the other way. And then, like, if anything, Emma would have to, like, run after you, or you could just leave. But she can't disengage. She's accidentally got that low heat flame cooking her to a simmer. Oh yeah, I wanted to say about the arc stuff. If I have any more chapter thoughts, I'll just go back to it. But for arc stuff, I decided to do just this chapter on its own, because when I was thinking about this arc, I thought there were 6 main chapters and then the interludes, but it only goes up to 20.5. And when I looked at the contents of 20.4, the thematic links were much stronger between 4 and 5, in my opinion, than 3 and 4. Because this is like, I don't know, Taylor's like stuck in this situation or whatever, but she's not like on the run. And all of 20.4 is her like trying to do an escape sequence. And then 20.5 is her in like the continued confrontation from that chapter. So it just felt like more of a piece with one another. Another great chapter, moving us forward into the central conflict of this fairly short arc. I guess it's about as long as like one of the early arcs. It's got fewer chapters than those early ones, but I would guess that total words, it's probably around the arc length of like arc 5, maybe. Because a bunch of these contemporary arcs had like just a boatload of chapters, like we had discussed as we were going through them. Like, yeah, arc 16 having 13 main chapters and 3 interludes, kind of thing. Anyway, characters. I'll go through my normal characters thing in a second. I wanted to point something out that I thought was like interesting. I didn't think it was like crazy notable, but it was like it jumped out to me. Aside from anything else, I wanted to point out about Taylor that she uses some like loaded language in this chapter without really considering it. And I definitely don't think it's bad writing, just worth pointing out that she's sort of still a like slightly racially insensitive character type person. The two specific moments that jumped out at me were her use of totem pole casually, and I mean the basic idea of her saying like the top of the totem pole when like in reality, if we're going to bring them up at all, we may as well acknowledge that the bottom of the totem pole is actually the place of honor because you're holding up those above you. And it's like in like League of Legends terms, they're carrying the whole team. But, generally I would stray away from using a totem pole as a casual metaphor. And then the second thing was calling Sophia a thug. Cause like, I don't know. I think that's a loaded word. I don't think you should call a black person a thug, probably. I think we can just avoid using the word thug mostly. But, that's not really where Taylor's at. Anyway. So moving on from Taylor being Taylor for a second. For the characters, the guard, and we saw this on the previous chapter, the guards like suck. Just like a lot of the men that have been presented to us like so far in the story, they're like adult. It's like an adult man, like the one she interacts with, who is clearly just perving on her and checking out her body. And doesn't care that she notices him checking her out, kind of thing. And this is the guy that they've got guarding a school. So, probably not great. Probably just perving on students all day. There's like this obvious contentious argument that's like on the precipice of violence the whole time, and they just don't care until the point at which somebody's actively doing a crime. And I feel like it's almost a commentary on how like the heroes / cops / even Taylor don't necessarily, although Taylor more so than other people, don't necessarily stop bad things from happening. They just sort of take retribution on people afterward, which often does not help the victim at all. But, yeah. Anyway, moving on from the guards. Oh, and I did like the creepy guard Collins. I liked his 30 words or less explanation to the principal. It was a very accurate short description of what happened in the fight. It didn't have the nuance of the fight itself, but if you add the nuance, it just goes from a story where Emma looks bad to a story where Emma looks really bad. And he doesn't like both sides it. He's like, she initiated it, the other one tried to disengage, she pressed the point. all the side characters, the very nondescript boy, Terry, and then Sheila, who had a bit more personality to her, really gave a solid flavor. There was the one random crony who I would hope, for Emma's sake, was not the one that she had shoved. Sorry. It's fine. Let's think. Who else do we got? We got, well, I guess the general crony group. I mean, they pretty much suck. Like, after hearing the words that were said in the back and forth, it's like, you bring up her dead mom and, like, try and make her dad think that her dad doesn't love her. You know, it's like, just baseline. That seems pretty fucked up. Like, there would have to be some ridiculous extenuating context. Some, like, truly Herculean levels of like, Taylor having been terrible to Emma in the past to justify trying to dig in with stuff like that. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on to Emma. Emma's level of projection in this argument is truly incredible. Astounding stuff. I love it. There is no action she would take that she wouldn't say that Taylor is taking, even on a subtle level. And she also assumes at all times that Taylor thinks just as she does. So, yeah, I mean, it's really interesting to see Emma have to cope in this situation where Taylor is able to emotionally hurt her just by letting insults roll off her and things. It does show that Taylor's come a long way, despite her continuing the conflict and everything. It's just, yeah. Taylor's really grown up a lot in this story. And then Taylor herself, yeah, I mean, she, in some ways, took some immature, reckless actions by not turning around, by continually being like, I don't want a conflict with Emma, and still walking out. But I still, despite that, like I said, gotta compliment our girl, our favorite hero, Taylor, who, you know, she didn't punch Emma, she didn't put a bug in her mouth, or, like, in her nose, or in her eyeball. She didn't do any of those things. She didn't take out her knife and shank her. She didn't do any of the stuff she wanted to do. So she had a lot of self-control. And Taylor, we salute you. And then, oh yeah, Principal Howell. I really liked Principal Howell's characterization. I know that Taylor doesn't appreciate her, but I guess I do. Even if it's for some corrupt reason, the way that she's proactively trying to take care of the students is, to my mind, so much better than the school officials at Winslow High, who were much worse than useless. And, like, the things she does, even if it's for some corrupt reason, are just the things that should have happened anyway. You know, I don't know. I just think that Taylor's being a little too purist in this moment, when she herself is the one saying to the heroes all the time, look, we gotta cut deals, we live in the real world. I can't go around pretending I live in fantasy land. And then she gets to this situation and she's like, but I don't like it when other people do it. Tattletale. Grrr. Shakes her fist at Cloud. So yeah, Taylor's kind of on one about Howl, but I think Howl's pretty cool. And Howl's pretty tough to be coming back and doing this shitty job. Let's see here. Anyone else worth talking about? No, I think I talked about everybody. Yes, very good character work. This is very much a character chapter. Though I didn't talk about Danny and like the relationship where we learned this sort of revelation about Danny. We already kind of knew this stuff that he hadn't like taken care of her properly, but Greg says, Hal out here doing the right thing for the wrong reasons. At least it's still a step up from Blackwell, who did the wrong things and also didn't have good reasons. Exactly. Previous principal at Winslow, even worse. And like I think the like 2 paragraphs of backstory she gets, like the fact that she worked with the previous principal of Arcadia for years and stuff, and like the fact that she would have directly interacted with Taylor had Taylor been able to escape the bullying at Winslow under a more sort of copacetic universe where it's not all fighties all the time. Like just a 1% less parahumans universe. Vale says, I try to do few things for few reasons. It seems statistically to be the most good option. Huh. Well, I'll just take that as you memeing, because if you want to dig into that statement, feel free to describe it more. In a real sense, I don't think that's the best, but I have a feeling like you're just joking. Anyway, for the powers, knowledge, and world building, we don't really see any power stuff aside from first Taylor thinking, what if Emma has like thinker powers like Tattletale to try and hurt my feelings? And then after she decides this isn't right, then she is later like, oh my god, there's definitely powers here. And then she thinks through their enemies and how she doesn't think any of the people new to town would have the capability to set up like a phantom zone where the right people get in trouble at school. And then, but for world building, I think that seeing the school open like this, like we learned a lot last chapter 20.2 about how the school is operating, letting the kids outside, but like seeing this sort of snappy justice and like, there don't have to be 10 incidents where Taylor is obviously victimized. It's just like one thing happens and it's like, all right, kid, you're going to the principal's. And then like in that meeting being like, we looked up your record, loser. You're getting kicked. And then they kick her from the server. She's banned. Bill says, Emma's a thinker 0. Taylor confirmed it. So yeah, a lot of good world building around like the sort of the way the characters are expected to interact at the school, the understanding and the leeway that I would say the school and even the guards do have. This is not like it's like half in, half out to being like a prison school type thing. Like in real life, in one of these prison school style scenarios, like they would be not letting the kids, sit in the yard. They would be like saying, like, fuck you if you don't like follow the class schedule and keep it together the whole time. We're gonna arrest you, and if you don't come to school, we're gonna arrest you for being a truant. Like that's the kind of shit that happens in real life. But yeah, weirdly, the Parahumans universe just a lot more understanding towards people than the real life America. But luckily, I did not ever go to a prison school. However, when I lived in other places and talked to my friends who grew up there, they're like, yeah, you can like practically see the bars from the outside. And when we drive past, it's just like, that looks like a concrete hovel that they keep prisoners in. So yes, I'm very thankful that the schools around here, despite being underfunded, are not just a like terrible pathway to prison. And so yes, this is a very interesting school given the higher guarding but also sort of higher status Arcadia already had in the city. Anyway, I don't need to stretch out this idea any further. If that was interesting to you, I think I've said all the interesting bits. If not, you want me to move on anyway. So, let's go on to audience participation. 20.3. Were you surprised by the events in the principal's office? First answer, we get Halloween. I was not surprised by anything in Worm because I already knew about the entire plot before reading. Sort of laughing, shrugging style emoji of a character that I think is maybe, it looks like it's MT from Infinity Train, but it's so small I'm having a trouble. Yeah, I'm just going to say that is MT from Season 2 of Infinity Train. Because it sure looks like that to me. Cool emoji, by the way, Halloween. I know you're not listening, just like always, but I will compliment it to you in a message afterwards. So everybody else gets to hear this emoji compliment. And then Halloween goes on to say, actually, that was a lie. I was surprised by it being good, and I was surprised by caring about Alec Vassil to the extent that I do. So yes, sometimes you read all the plot beforehand and nothing shocking. And then we got 2 + 4 × 5's answer. Not really? Like, it was a pleasant surprise, sure, but I wasn't utterly confounded like Taylor. Oh, Greg says I can click on it and see a larger version, and it is much more clearly MT as a larger version. Okay. Oh yeah, wait, I forgot that the character renames himself Lake at the end. See, the thing is that MT is still a self-name, and that's what they were calling themselves throughout the season, so that's what stuck in my mind. And if you haven't seen the last episode of that season, you wouldn't know. Oh, yes, but to address 2 + 4 × 5's answer, I wasn't utterly confounded in the way Taylor was, but I think I was probably more in the shocked camp than you were. And then Lillian says, it was mixed for me. Like, things were going too well for a bit, so I was cautious, but I was hoping that maybe the system would work for once. And it kinda did, depending on your feeling about it. And then Vale's answer, which was alluded to before. I was surprised that it was beneficial to Taylor. Tattletale watching out for her made sense, but I didn't consider the lengths it would go. It was one more small event that added life to the story. Things happening in the world that make sense, that also surprised me and Taylor. Yeah. And I agree. It breathes life into the world when you feel like not only are the characters continuing to take actions when they're off screen and not in Taylor's view, but like all of the pieces continue to fit together well and make a lot of sense to me. Nothing feels out of place. If you have the pieces set up well enough, the book kind of writes itself like clockwork. And I know some people are, there's the obvious, like, I don't believe in some idealistic, like, a character exists outside of the author. The author is always guiding the characters. But part of what you're doing as an author is laying the groundwork so that when you make the choices later that you want to make, they align with how you've already presented the character. Or if they don't align, that there's a reason that the audience buys for it. Like a new factor, or like they were mind controlled, or like whatever. There just has to be something that, like, it all has to feel right. It's got to have that verisimilitude. So, so yeah, those were the answers to the audience participation question for 20.3. And then, So I hadn't quite finalized what the question was going to be, but had a good idea, I guess. I was thinking, Vic and I were thinking about it being based around Dragon and how she acts. And I guess more or less they were already ordered to go to the cafeteria and to have the confrontation there. So with the idea that they're already accepting the cafeteria confrontation, how do you think Dragon could have handled the situation better? So let me type that out. We're going to go for 20.5. It's going to be, how do you think Dragon would have handled the cafeteria confrontation better, given the idea that he was going to force, accepting the idea that the to force. All right. Boom. It's a bit... Oh, actually, you know what? I'm gonna quickly delete this. Repost it as 20.4/20.5. I'm sure this is very interesting radio content and that everybody loves it. But boom. Now I actually have a question done. And, so let's start up that outro music, because I don't think there's any more things to do or address. We are still using the music Queen Scourge. I need to work on the next song with Scarlett, because I'm having trouble with the ideas for the song, so that's part of the holdup on getting a new one, is just the ideation phase, which is from my side. So, yes, you can find Scarlett and her work at twitch.tv/Scarlett_Rogue. Vale says take care, so goodbye, Vale. And our Discord server can be found at the link in the channel description and the stream description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. And there is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. And Greg says cheers, so cheers, Greg. Let's see, is there any time left on this song? Yeah, I can babble for another 20 seconds. I can definitely manage that. I'm looking forward to the upcoming chapters and, of course, the upcoming arcs. We have hit the part of the book where the writing is just phenomenal for pretty much the whole rest of it, and I'm excited.